Um, so one of Ernest Holmes' greatest teachings was about unity. In fact, in our um, in our church, unity is really the basis for all healing. And wanting to know about who we are and what we are all starts from within. And as we come to know who we are and what we are, really great things can happen in our life. And I think I've told this story in one of the things that we do in the foundation class is one of the classes, it's 10 weeks long, but there's one extra class that just teaches the method that we teach of prayer, which is called spiritual mind treatment, and it has 5 steps. And the first step is recognizing that God is everything, and the second step is unifying ourselves with that, knowing that God is all there is, and that each of us is one with God. And so one day when Becky and I were in Arizona, a minister called me up, minister friend who had been a minister way longer than I had, and he said, I just had this realization, and I need to talk to somebody. Can I come in and talk to you? And I said, of course. So he said to me that in his career as a minister, he had prayed with 17 different people and had gotten an instant healing, just like that. And he said, I got to tell you, Ron, it drove me nuts. Why wasn't it 16? Why wasn't it 18? Why wasn't it 20? Why was it 17? And today, he said, I was meditating and it came to me on what it was. And I said, tell me. And he said, when I did the second step of the treatment those 17 times, which is the unifying step, knowing that you're one in God, he said, those 17 times, I really hit it. And it was just so perfectly done in my own mind that the people I was praying for had an instant healing. So, that's a really powerful lesson on what, when we really know our oneness with Spirit, what it could lead to. And I was thinking as I was preparing this that we have so many ways of creating separation with one another. We have all of these labels and all of these characterizations that we can call one another, and yet in reality, the only true name for each other would be brother and sister, because we all come from the same source. I'm going to say this again later, but there's only one creator, and we're different on the surface, but deep down at our center, we're all one. We're all alike. So I want to read to you another poem. It's called "Underneath We're All the Same" by a lady named Amy Skirvin. He prayed. It wasn't my religion. He ate. It wasn't what I ate. He spoke. It wasn't my language. He dressed. It wasn't what I wore. He took my hand. It wasn't the color of mine. But when he laughed, it was how I laughed. And when he cried, it was how I cried. So, in preparing this, Becky downloaded a document that must be this thick. I mean, the printer, I kept saying to her, the printer's going to run out of ink. The printer's going to die, for crying out loud. It was like this thick, both sides. And she kept saying to me, wait till you see this thing, wait till you read it. And it was really fabulous. So I just want to tell you, it's called the Global Oneness Project. The Global Oneness Project. And it's really, I haven't gotten through it all, but it is really, really an interesting document on people that went around for years around the world trying to see oneness in the world. And one of the things they quoted, this is an exact quote, but Mother Teresa said one time, I want you to be concerned about your neighbor. Do you even know who your neighbor is? And she was speaking, trying to get us out of beyond ourselves. And the document says oneness is created when we get out of our own self-interest, when we can serve other people, when we open ourselves to the sacredness of life. And they said in there that we really need to be willing to feel our feelings. And they said everybody wants a deeper connection with other people. And they asked the question, well, why is it so elusive? And they answered the question that it's so elusive because in order to have the deeper connection, you have to be willing to feel your feelings. And so many of us aren't willing to go in and aren't willing to feel our feelings. And they said, we don't want to understand love. We want to feel love. We don't want to study peace. We want to feel peace. And we want to feel like we're part of a community. And feeling helps us remember that we share the world. So I have a couple of stories that I'm going to do in the talk, and I'll tell you about the book that I got the stories out of later. But one of the stories, each chapter was written by a different person. And one of the chapters was written by Muhammad Ali. And he talked about, when he first became a Muslim, how Elijah Muhammad was teaching hatred. And he never bought that part of the teaching. And one day he was listening to the radio, and there was a news story about a home for the elderly that was going to close. And Muhammad Ali didn't want it to close. So he called up the home and he said, I'm going to donate $100,000 so you don't have to close. And they wouldn't believe him. They wouldn't believe him because it was a Jewish home for the elderly. And they didn't believe that Muhammad Ali, a Muslim, was going to donate the money. And it took him a while to convince them, I guess, when they sort of checked. But at any rate, he did. And what he said in this article, he said, it doesn't matter what race we call ourselves because we're all part of the human race. And then he said, there's an old saying, and the old saying is, rivers, lakes, ponds, and streams all have different names, but they all have water. All religions have different names, but they all contain the truth. So a fellow named Andrew Bojarski, I was reading a blog by him this week, and he tried to define the concept of oneness, and I thought he did a great job, so I want to share it with you. He said, just think about a beautiful tapestry of glowing colors and interwoven design. And he said, all the threads are the same, except they're different colors. And he said, so who are you in this tapestry? And he said, you're a thread. And he said, what happens when a thread is damaged? Then the entire tapestry is diminished. And he said, what happens if a thread is enhanced? Then the entire tapestry is enhanced. And he said, so every time we call somebody a name, every time we judge somebody, every time we criticize somebody, the tapestry is diminished. Every time we smile at somebody, every time we do a good deed for somebody, every time we love somebody, the tapestry is enhanced, because what we do to each other, we do to ourselves. And what we do to ourselves, we do to each other. And so what we need to do is to recognize and honor our own divinity, and recognize and honor the divinity in everyone else. So today's Poetry Day. This one's by Rumi. Love has come and flows like love beneath my skin, through my veins. It has emptied me of myself and filled me with the beloved. Rumi is the biggest selling poet in the United States still today. So I want to tell you a story, and it's about a young girl who felt different. And this is how she described herself. She said, I'm tan, I wear a dorky jacket, I have 4 eyes, meaning, I guess, glasses. I have a crooked smile and a weird patch over one eye. So all the other kids nicknamed her Pirate Girl. And she said that one of her first lessons about spirituality, she said to herself, I should be like a crayon box, because crayons of all colors have to learn to live together in that crayon box. And she said, being young, she couldn't understand why people singled her out and why people made her feel different. And she talked about one day she was in the yard at school, and one of the students, other students, tapped her on the shoulder. And when she turned around, the other student said to her, are you Chinese? And she said, no, I'm Korean. And then I'm going to read to you what she wrote. So she says to this kid, I'm Korean. And the girl who asked her now, she turned to her friend who had asked her what I had said. The words she said affected me more than any criticism, insult, or compliment I had ever received before. She whispered back, I think she said she's a crayon. So we could take some time this week to just go into this stillness and just reflect on the beauty and the diversity of the universe. Think of the majesty of spirit and how it brings its marvelous variety into our lives. Just consider the colors, sounds, and textures of nature, and then consider the colors, sounds, and texture of humanity. And I was thinking, if more of us did that, we probably not only would heal ourselves, but we would heal the planet too. So I was looking at Ernest Holmes' book, The Science of Mind, and if any of you remember the teaching symbol, it has 2 arrows going down, and on one of the versions of it, on one of the arrows, on one of the sides of the arrow, it says the descent of spirit, and what that means is spirit coming in to form. And on the other arrow, it only has one word, unity. And what that means is from the one come many. So, it's what I said before, we all have the same creator. So I've never read a lot of Edgar Cayce, but I did read some this week. And Edgar Cayce said it's one of the great ironies of life that the organization that's most intended to enrich our relationship with God does the most to divide us. And the organization that he's talking about broadly is religion. He said more wars have been fought over religious principles than any other cause. And he said, it's not only between religions, it's within denominations. There are a ton of Protestant denominations, there's a couple of Catholics, there's 3 in Judaism, and you don't need to look beyond Syria and the Mideast to see what's happening with Muslim to Muslim in our world today. And Casey said, so what happens is we become separated, we feel separated, and we feel disillusioned. And I thought this was really fascinating. He said he thought the cause of it was ignorance of our oneness with God. And if you read anything of Ernest Holmes, it's exactly what Ernest Holmes would say, that it comes from our ignorance, not knowing better, and that we're challenged to bring our awareness of God right here, right now, wherever we are. And Casey said we share a common human bond, and he called it our collective humanity. I thought that was a really great name, our collective humanity. And he said that there's only one God. We're all God's children, and God's too big for any one religion, to have all of God. God isn't limited to one, and God works through each and every one of us, and we need to share the commonalities that we have. And that's why each week, you heard Peggy read that if anybody's never been in one of our centers before, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you, no matter what your divine path is. And when we were in Arizona, I never said this to anybody, but in my mind, I kind of decided I was going to stop doing it, because you do it every week. And so I said to myself, this is the last Sunday I'm going to do it. After the service, somebody came up to me that had been coming for a long time and said, you know why I came back? And I said, no, that thing that you say at the beginning, that's the only reason I came back. So I decided not to not do it anymore. And a couple of months later, I decided to not do it again. And I never told, not even Becky, I never said anything. I just said in my mind, today's the last day I'm going to do it, and I'll be darned, the same exact thing happened. Somebody else came up to me after that service and said the only reason I ever came back for times 2 and 3 was because of what you do. So I decided I'm never not going to do it. So I mentioned the story about the young Korean girl and Muhammad Ali. And I got those from a book that's called Open My Eyes, Open My Soul. And the book was written by the late Yolanda King, Martin Luther King's daughter, and a lady named Elodia Tate. And I got a phone, because some of you know this story because I've told it in the foundation class. I got a call from Elodia Tate one day, who I don't know. And she introduced herself and said, I'm writing a book with Yolanda King, Martin Luther King's daughter. And we read something you wrote, and we'll pay you to put it in the book. And I said, if it's Martin Luther King's daughter, you don't even need to pay me. I'm just so honored to have her do it. And she called me back later and she said, our attorney said we can't pay you because you didn't, it was a story that you related. It wasn't something that you made up. Can we still use it? And I said, yep. And she called me back later and she said, and she put it in the book actually, that everywhere they go, when they speak about the stories in the book, the last story they tell is this one, which I'm going to tell you. And they said, and we give you credit all the time. And it's not mine. It's an old Hasidic tale. I wanted to tell you, this is, the book is, again, Open My Eyes, Open My Soul. And this is the dedication in the book. It says, dedicated to our human family and the realization we are one. So here's the Hasidic tale that I told that's in the book. A rabbi is teaching a class, and he says to the class, how can you tell when night has passed? And one of the students raises his hands and says, when in the distance, you could tell the difference between a dog and a wolf. And the rabbi says, And another student raises his hand and says, when in the distance, you can tell what kind of fruit is on a tree. And the rabbi says, And a couple of other kids, and every time somebody gives him an answer, he goes, And so finally, one of the kids says, well, then you tell us. And here's what the rabbi says. He says, when you can look into the face of any man or woman and see it is your brother and sister. Because if you can't see this, it's still night. So Becky and I are going to close together. And this is a document. The part that I'm going to read is known as the Declaration of Principles. And it was written in 1927 by Ernest Holmes. And then, I really don't remember how long ago, somebody else wrote what's called the Global Heart Vision, the vision for the Centers for Spiritual Living. And they combined the two. So the part I'm going to read is the Declaration of Principles, and the part that Becky's going to read is called the Global Heart Vision. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God.
We envision the emergence of the global heart to balance and guide the further evolution of humanity as stewards of our planet and all its inhabitants.
We believe in the incarnation of the Spirit in everyone, and that all people are incarnations of the one Spirit.
We see a world free of homelessness, violence, war, hunger, separation, and disenfranchisement.
We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul, forever and ever expanding.
We see a world in which there is generous and continuous sharing of heart and resources.
We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it.
We envision a world in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm.
We believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be obtained by all.
We see a world in which borders are irrelevant. We see a world which has renewed its emphasis on beauty, nature, and love through the resurgence of creativity, art, and aesthetics.
We believe in the unity of all life and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God.
We see a world in which fellowship with all life prospers and connects through the guidance of spiritual wisdom and experience.
We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence.
We envision a world in which we live and grow as one global family that respects and honors the interconnectedness of all life.
We believe in the direct revelation of truth through the intuitive and spiritual nature of the individual, and that any person may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God.
We envision Centers for Spiritual Living as a bridge across the illness and illusion of separation, thereby dynamically empowering the vision of Global Heart.
We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. We believe in the healing of the sick through the power of this mind. We believe in the control of conditions through the power of this mind.
We envision Centers for Spiritual Living as united and actuated by this compelling vision of a healthy world, a world experiencing Global Heart, and is ardently committed to bridging this vision forth through its ministries and its transformative teaching.
We believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all.
We see the Centers for Spiritual Living as a global community of inspired individuals caring for and about each other and the entire planetary family, thereby bringing the gift of active compassion and kindness to the world. Our local ministries and communities become points of inspiration and influence, effectively advancing the vision of the Global Heart to benefit all expressions of life.
We believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of all is God.